What is up, guys, and welcome to another episode of Guarani Vision, the first ever podcast dedicated to Paraguayan football in English. As always, I'm Roberto Rojas, and joining me my two great co-hosts, Fede Perez and Ralph Hannah. And guys, here we are. We are right into Copa America season. Today is the first day of the European Championships as well in Europe, but our attention is going to be given to what Paraguay will be doing in the United States as they take on Colombia, Costa Rica, and Brazil, and who knows, maybe the rest of the continent, of the two continents, as they strive to dream of being able to be champions for the third time of a Copa America. We got a lot to discuss here, guys, because obviously we did see Paraguay play in their first two pre-Copa America friendlies against Peru and Chile. Mixed results in that sense, but obviously the reaction is kind of negative, you would say. I think it's been kind of a downside from what we've seen from the two games. I'm curious to see what you guys think, but yeah, let's go to someone. Let's go to Ralph first, because Ralph, obviously, you and I will be at the Copa America games. We'll be at the games against Costa Rica and Colombia in Houston and Texas, respectively. I'll be in Vegas for the game against Brazil. But from what we've seen from these two friendlies, I mean, they've got to improve tremendously in order for them to compete with not just one of them, but all three of their rivals. But yeah, how are you feeling, I guess, 6 days away from the start of the tournament?
Yeah, hey Roberto, Fede, everybody watching and listening. Yeah, we're not feeling great, I think, because Paraguay, what we asked for this time last week was some goals, and we haven't seen any, right? Paraguay's still struggling to find their feet. They can't score a goal, and then in the match against Chile, of course, they collapsed. Really, in the second half, even though they conceded two in the first half, they collapsed in that second half in terms of not really playing football as a team. So you suddenly have these warm-up games that were hopefully going to build the team and build confidence going into the tournament, and it's actually had the opposite effect. I mean, Garnero talked about it in his press conference that there's a mentality and like the kind of team's culture around how players are feeling. That's something they need to work on. He actually was asking for the fans to help out in that, but it is not really something the fans can do. These games are being played away from home, and if the players are reading social media instead of training, maybe that's part of the problem, right? So what he's really got to do is build this team and try and get them to do something, I think, in the Copa America. Because remember, as we talked about before, even if they don't get through the group, if they have a good 3 games, that sets them up well for the World Cup qualifiers. At the moment, you're thinking if they have 3 games similar to the Chile game, do you even want to see Garnero in the World Cup qualifiers? That's how, that's what people are starting to talk about. So this has really been a disastrous 2 games to kind of start off, not just because of the football played, but I just think, like you were saying, that the kind of ambience that is now created, instead of flying to Panama, like hoping for maybe your third win in 3 friendlies, you're going there still trying to look for a goal and still not sure what your starting 11 is, because it was very clear from the 2 teams Garnero has set up and the subs he made, especially in the Chile game, he's not really convinced with this team, and I don't think he really has that 11 going into the Copa, which is now like a week away, as you're talking about.
Yeah, Fede, I mean, obviously you're on the ground, you're right there in Paraguay. I can imagine that it's kind of a somber feeling at the moment, or at least a feeling of pure pessimistic vibes, really, because like Ralph had mentioned, in these two games, we haven't scored a goal. We obviously haven't even found a team that we think, yeah, we can go with this at the Copa. And yes, we've seen obviously Colombia fare out really good recently. Brazil, not in the best shape that they want to be. And in Costa Rica, obviously, they're getting the results as they need. So they're probably looking at the Paraguay games and thinking, they're probably going to be sky high of confidence in comparison to what we're doing. But yeah, well, first of all, welcome back. But just how have you been feeling after seeing these two games? And we'll analyze it right now, momentarily. But just, I don't know, man. I feel very pessimistic of what we've seen from this team, from Danny Garnero, and just the players involved.
Yeah, hi Roberto, hi Rob, hi to everyone listening to Guarani Vision. As we're heading into the weekend, as we're recording, I'm thinking, thankfully, we have a lot of festivities going on. We have San Juan going on. We have Father's Day coming up this weekend also. Happy Father's Day to everyone that's listening, Paraguayan fathers especially. Roberto I think, is the only one that has a Paraguayan father out of the three of us. Rob with his heritage. In my family, it would be my grandfather that was actually Paraguayan, but my dad's from Uruguay, so he's not in the conversation. But Ralph, you're a Paraguayan father, if we put it that way, because your girls were born in Paraguay, so that makes you part of the festivity also. So happy Father's Day to everyone. Thankfully, we got something to put a smile on this face to talk about something good, Roberto, because if I'm going to start talking about the Ave Roja, I'm going to heat up, man, because I've been really having a rough time with these guys. We see new players coming into the team, and we still see the same old team. We see the same old attitude. We see the same things. Like Raph was saying, no goals, no comebacks from this team. You could see that right away, especially in that Chile game. They got a goal on them, and they were not coming back. It looked even uglier after that. It was 3 goals. I'm not even going to talk about that much about Peru, because Peru barely got a shot on us, and they were actually kind of angry that they got a 0-0 on us. They were angry that they couldn't beat us, and we were actually kind of happy that we got a couple of good things going on there. And when you think that this team is finally going to build on that, on the next game, no, we take 2 steps back and we lose 3-0 like we did against Chile. Thankfully, we do have one more friendly coming up before we head into the real competition, which will be the Copa America. But these guys got to show up now. I mean, the real competition for these guys is every game right now, because out of the last, I was looking, 14 games, guys, we've only beaten Nicaragua and Bolivia. I mean, everybody's looking at us and saying, oh, we can beat these guys. These guys are not going to do anything against us. I mean, if I'm Brazil, if I'm Colombia, if I'm Costa Rica right now, I'm feeling great. But I'm Paraguayan, and I'm not feeling good about this team, Roberto. And I want to break it down, because there are a couple of good things I see on the future and out of this team, out of these 2 games, but not so much.
There's not a lot. I think the bad definitely outweighs the good from what we've seen in these last 2 games. But we'll go into it right now, because obviously we saw the first game of the year against Peru over there in Lima. Paraguay taking on Peru over there, and we saw an interesting lineup be given from the start. We saw a lineup of Coronel Velasquez, 4-3-3. We got Coronel Velasquez, Balbuena, Alderete. We saw obviously Balbuena come in for Gustavo Gomez, who was suspended. Junior Alonso to complete that defense. In midfield, we saw Villasanti, Cubas, and Matias Rojas. Obviously, the big question mark was how are you going to put Enciso in that? There was no Enciso in the starting lineup. You had Almiron, Alex Arce making his first ever debut, and Ramon Sosa. So we didn't see the 4 players that, and especially with Diego Gomez missing out as well, we didn't see those kind of like the magic trio of what we saw. But, obviously from this, and I'll go to Ralph on this one first, it was a match that I feel like Paraguay could have taken advantage of. I think that it was there for the kill. And certainly we see a Paraguay team that, I think from what I've seen, was so dependent on the wing play. I think we saw it wasn't the best game from Almiron. I think certainly what Garnero was able to put out was a side that just looked very defensive, I would say. So you didn't get so much service from the likes of Alex Arce. You didn't see much of him. I think it's a good defensive performance. I think obviously the player that's kind of stood out from both of them really was Omar Lerete. I think he's certainly become someone that has really, and not just in these 2 games, I think in recent games as well, even before that, has really established himself as kind of the one player that out of the 11 probably has the biggest he has that spot secured out of everyone. So yeah, I think it was really a draw that I think comes in with a bitter taste, because I think Paraguay could have done more if Garnero decided to probably just risk it more in this game.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think there's a couple of things. One is, could they have risked it more? I mean, partly he was forced by circumstance. The reason he played, for example, Junior Alonso left back, that really is a central defender, is because the Libertad left backs that he wanted to play were still recovering from that final league game. So he was kind of forced into that a bit. But then the midfield setup was strange, I thought. He brought in Cubas, by the way. I would just want to highlight Cubas, I think, has been our best player as well, along with Alderete. I think we're seeing like a lot of our build-up going forward, but also our defensive balance is going to depend on how Cubas is performing. But in this game, he left him almost stranded. Rather than playing with 2 6s or double pivot, he kind of left him stranded with Villasanti being a bit higher up. And then I guess he wanted Matias Rojas' position was a bit strange to me. I think he wanted him to play how Diego Gomez plays. But Matias Rojas, for as much as he's somehow filled in there in the Inter Miami team, it's a bit different, I think, with when you're playing with Busquets. So Rojas was very kind of, what's the word, like he was giving too much space basically between picking up the ball from Cubas and then being able to deliver it to, say, Alex Arce. And in the end, you didn't really see much. So Paraguay went very direct. And I don't think that's the way they're trying to play with Garnero is being so direct. So like you mentioned, the wing play, because they were just trying to find balls into the channels. And poor Alex Arce, I mean, it wasn't an easy debut for him because he was a bit stranded. He was alone. But when he did get that ball into feet, he wasn't really able to hold it up much. And I thought in the second half against Peru, we looked better when Adam Barreto was on there. And Adam Barreto really came out fighting, was physical. It was a very physical game, we should mention, right? It was a 0-0 draw, supposedly a friendly, but there were some big challenges flying about. I think it's Barreto took an elbow from Zambrano in that second half, which, you know, we don't really see this in friendlies, and we're not meant to see that. So it was very physical, but ultimately, at no point did we see Paraguay put together a good kind of sequence of play or see that their build-up phase was going to work to be able to attack. So while they were defensively very strong in that game, you never really thought they were going to score. And maybe the 0-0 was quite the obvious result. I don't know what Fede thinks.
I was kind of surprised actually by how much we actually had the ball against Peru, because that's a team that got kind of accustomed during Gareca's time, especially to have the ball a lot, to do that possession football, and it wasn't that way in this game. And Paraguay had the ball, but like Ralph was saying, I mean, there was no construction in the midfield. There was very little attacking and very little risk taken by our coach. Like Roberto also said, I would put all of that together just to say that it was a very poor game from our team, especially from certain players that you're waiting that they're going to stand out eventually. Like Ramon Sosa, I thought this was a game for him to take what we've seen from him all year in his club and take it to the national team. And he, I believe, only had one shot or one attempt at goal. And it was pretty much the same thing that Almiron also did. It wasn't, they didn't break through. They weren't free attacking. And I want to see the players feel natural with their movements. I want to see players play with their teammates, but try to build something. And you're seeing that a lot of them are just trying to go for the individual work, right? And when Enciso comes on, it feels like you see it even more, and he's getting criticized because of that situation, because he might be a ball hugger. He doesn't let go of the ball as much as people would like to. They want to see him be a playmaker when he can't get around players. We'll obviously talk about Enciso a bit more when we talk about the game against Chile, because that's the one that he was able to start. I don't think he came into the squad being 100%. Let's be honest. I mean, he hasn't played 90 minutes yet ever since he came back from the injury. I think this was the first time he did in the game against Chile after that game against Nicaragua. And that game was like about a year ago. So you're definitely trying to get your star into the best shape possible, because he can't be the star of this team, or at least people are waiting for him to be one of the stars, just like Ramon Sosa, just like Almiron. That's why I'm putting these guys pretty much on the same level, because I'm waiting for the same spark from every single one of these guys in offense, and we're not getting that. So why are we even going to talk about the forwards? Why are we even going to talk about Alex Arce or Adam Pereira if the ball's not getting to them? I thought these two guys were pretty fresh. I thought they didn't feel the weight on their shoulders, like Gustavo Gomez, like Almiron, like the players that have, they've been carrying this situation for a longer time. I thought the new players did a really good job in that sense. Cubas had a tremendous game, I believe, against Peru, recovering balls, getting the ball back. I thought Villasanti could have done a little bit more, but the player that really didn't stand out in the midfield was Matias Rojas. And I don't know if it was because of what Garnero did with him. like Ralph was saying, where he put him, because he did the same thing with Kaku also against Chile, threw him on the line, and that was kind of weird. I mean, Kaku running back, trying to defend, trying to get the ball back. That's not his game at all. So I don't know. I think it had a lot to do with what Garnetto's trying to make out of these guys, tactical wise, what he's trying to do for the team, and maybe putting that in the first spot and not putting the players' ability, what the players can bring to the team in his first choice. I do think he has to make up his mind in that sense. He has these 2 games to really make the right decisions heading forward, Roberto, because we did see a couple of good players, but certainly certain players that were up for the test didn't show up, like Matias Rojas. That's why he didn't even get a game time probably in the second game, right? And it was Kaku's chance against Peru. I mean, we're still looking for that playmaker. We're still looking for the player that can have the ball on his feet, that can make the right passes, and that can connect the team a bit more. But we didn't get that player. I missed Diego Gomez like crazy in these 2 games, because I did think it was going to be Diego Gomez in the midfield. Garnetto was thinking about him, and Ralph also mentioned Junior Alonso. Maybe in Garnetto's head, it was another player. It was maybe Mateo Gamarra in a certain point during the process. Certain players maybe didn't come for or aren't ready right now for the Copa America. So yeah, it's Junior Alonso and it's Matias Espinosa, who will probably be the starter if he's 100%. But it's you got certain players fighting for the spot, and you got players that in Garnetto's eyes right now, Roberto, they are the starters, and he's not going to move them. Like the goalkeeper also. I mean, Coronel, he didn't try a single other goalkeeper yet. It's been Coronel. He's gotten the confidence. So in certain players, you're seeing that the coach is saying, okay, these are my players. But in another spot, he still has his doubts, definitely.
There is still some really tinkering on this side, and I think that's not a good sign when you're literally a week removed from a week before the start of the tournament. I think that's always the big fear, as we saw even in the Chile game. The changes that we did see was, of course, with the back line. You saw Alderete retain his spot, and Coronel, but you had Ivan Ramirez and Nestor Jimenez playing in the fullback. Again, the big dilemma, Ralph, of all of this has also been the fullbacks. For all the talk of how we've been able to not deal with a playmaker or even a goal scorer, we have to mention we don't really have any good fullbacks. We have Matias Espinosa, who obviously has flourished in that, but after that, and this has been a recurring issue for quite some time, we have not been able to produce any quality fullbacks for the side, and that's concerning if you're gonna play forward and you're gonna try to obviously have players that are able to defend and of course move forward on your attack.
Yeah. It's interesting, right? That you think about Paraguay maybe historically, and usually that fullback spot has never been such an issue as it has now. And the 2 players you mentioned, obviously they play in Libertad, so they're from the local league. Is it weird to think, wow, we just don't have like one player that's made it abroad or is in Europe? I mean, Ivan Ramirez has played in Argentina for a little bit, but he almost his whole career has been in Paraguay. And so you sometimes think, wow, we just don't have any more. Someone like an Ivan Perez. Ivan Perez is very old now, but in his moment, he was in Serie A playing, right? When he left Cerro very young. And so it is a strange position, and it's a position that's become so important right at the moment, especially if you're going to play 4-3-3, because you're not going to have much. You'll either need a winger that's really good at tracking back, but then you also need your fullback to be very good overlapping, because they're going to help out, because it's going to be part of your idea, especially if you're playing with inverted wingers, which is what Garnetto is doing. So they're going to come in and they need to make space for the fullback. So it becomes a very important position. And actually, it's always been very important to Garnetto. If we look back at his teams, I was just trying to think when he was at Olympia as well. I mean, people used to talk about Ivan Torres. Ivan Torres won like 6 league titles, and a lot of it was playing with Garnetto at left back. So I mean, he managed to develop his fullbacks into really important players in his teams. So yeah, that's going to be a concern, because what we've seen, and this was the same problem Barros Schelotto had and Berizzo had, is they said, do we go with someone more attacking that we don't really fully trust, or do we just put central defenders there? And often Berizzo especially always went with like the line of 4 central defenders. which made us extremely defensive. But then we saw the risk of playing with it when you concede those goals to Chile. Some of it was also Kaku, because he surprisingly played Kaku on the right hand side instead of in the middle, and Kaku was not going to track back. And of course, the first two goals come from Suazo crossing from that side to Davila. And because Ramirez has been exposed, the one fullback, by the fact that Kaku's not tracking back. So I don't know. There's a few things there. It is a difficult situation, because that's maybe where I do feel for Garnero. He doesn't really have the fullbacks that he needs, right, to try and build his team. Whereas in other areas, I'm looking at Garnero and saying, well, you're playing players in the wrong position. For example, Kaku. There's no point playing him on the right hand side and having Enciso in the middle. It was switch it the other way. And Enciso's great at tracking back. Look what he does with Brighton, with Deserbi. He's very used to that kind of role. But in the end, he switched it, and yeah, we got some of those difficulties. So while I feel for him a little bit on the fullback situation, there were other things that we saw with the tinkering and the changing, moving players out of their natural positions, that obviously didn't work, and that's where we saw the real collapse against Chile.
Yeah, we definitely did see that. Looking at the rest of the lineup, we saw Fabricio Peralta get the start, his first ever game for Paraguay as well. Fede, Cuevas retaining his spot. Kaku Romero, of course, being with Enciso, Angel Romero on the wing as well, and Adam Barreiro getting the start too. So it's been weird looking at this. We've obviously seen, from what I've see right here, 20 different players, or roughly around there. I'll have to double check real quick. But yeah, man, I mean, it's just been frustrating to see. But, I think from what you said, and I'm curious to see what you think about kind of the positives. Is there any? Is there any positive you can take from both these games, especially when you just conceded 3 against Chile? The same Chile side that literally about 5 months ago, or maybe a bit more after that, like 7-8 months ago, you drew them over there 0-0 in the qualifiers.
I putting myself into Garnero's head, our head coach, what he tried to do in these 2 games, I think he tried out 2 very different style of football. One, let's have the ball, which was against Chile. Let's try to attack a bit more, give the responsibility to the midfielders. Obviously, I'm with Ralph. I don't think he put him in the right places. I mean, Angel Romero has been playing in Corinthians on the right side, and Kaku Romero, we know he's a center midfielder. He's a number 10. He can build up plays, but he's not gonna defend. You can't do that with him. So there are certain responsibilities that he gave to players that I don't think were the right ones. And when he tried to fix it in the second half, I think we saw a bit more attacking of this team. We saw even Angel putting a ball right onto Alan Barreiro's head, and that was probably the best opportunity we had, right? That ball that was really close by. But I mean, out of the bright spots, I would say between the 2 games, I would say Gustavo Velasquez. I mean, this is a guy that really came through on that right side in the defense, and I do think he even won the spot over Ivan Ramirez, which is a player that, in my eyes, he's not going to be able to defend against Vinicius. He's not going to be able to defend against Diaz, the stars that we're going to have to face in this Copa America. He's more of he's a player to attack. And even though you can do what you did against Argentina, which was the first game that Garnero managed. He put 3 defenders, and he put Matias Espinosa on the side, and he put Ivan Ramirez on the sides. But that was more in the midfield, right? To try to have fast players on the sides. That did not end well. Ivan Ramirez, I remember, came out of that match right at halftime because he wasn't doing a good job trying to stop the fast players that Argentina had. I do think we're going to have the same problem in this Copa America because of the teams that we're going to have to face up against. So I think it's Gustavo Velasquez, probably the bright spot and the best player that we found out of these 2 games. And it was a good decision because we didn't see him against Russia, which was the game that he was called up. But at least Garnero found a player there. And I also saw that character, of a player that's not afraid to go in hard. And I think he's going to do very well there with Omar Alderete, who's probably been the best defender also out of these 6-7 games that Garnero has been doing his thing with this team, and he's been putting him on in the starting team also. I mean, he took Balbuena out of this team, which was the player always playing with Gustavo Gomez. And don't get me started on Gustavo Gomez because he's not doing much, guys. I mean, he's not making a difference in the defense. He's not being the leader. He's not being a very good captain. And a lot of people are talking about this situation also. I mean, who are the captains? Who are the leaders in this team? When we get a goal scored, I mean, nobody's saying anything. Nobody's complaining. I mean, these guys got, I don't know, they got accustomed to losing or something like that. I mean, for them, it's probably like normal to come to the national team now and we get scored on, let's go forward again, nothing's happening. I mean, this is normal, we're just losing and losing. I mean, you kind of get used to that, and I hate that from our captain. I mean, historically Paraguay has had very strong captains, players that have hit the table, that have fought with their teammates to try to get them up. I mean, I'm talking about Chilavert, I'm talking about historical players in that locker room, and you can't be like Gustavo Gomez has been being the captain. And I hope Garnero also sees this situation, because your captain needs to be the player that brings up everybody. And I'm not seeing that from Gustavo Gomez. Besides what he's doing, defending, because he's a very good defender. But I mean, he maybe it's his time, like Almiron, to bench them in this Copa America for certain games. And, for them to realize that they got to bring more to this team. I mean, they just can't have the starting position all the time, and we're just going to wait on them. Well, how long are we going to wait on them? The process keep on going. The coaches come and go, but they're always playing, and they're not showing up. They're not making the team better. They're not making the team win. So why not take them out of the team? You asked me for the bright spots, Roberto. Sorry, I got into Gustavo Gomez. Another bright spot, maybe it's the opportunity to see a different center forward. I'm still not made up my mind between Alex Arce and Alan Barreiro. I did not see much of them because the team didn't do much for them to show up in the box. But if I have to go with one right now between Alan and Alex, I think Alex Arce is the one that fits in more. I mean, he's the one that probably looks more like Tony Sanabria, the one that can. And he's coming in hot, I mean, into this tournament. Let's not forget how much goals this guy has brought into his club. So if it's up to me right now, I would start Alex Arce. I think he's the forward that can make a difference. But barely some bright spot, guys. I mean, I barely saw some good things out of these two games. Hopefully against Panama, hopefully in the last friendly we show up and we head into the Copa America a bit fresh, because as of right now, people are looking and pointing fingers at this team. Ralph mentioned Garnero's press conference. It did not look good at all. I mean, saying that the fans are the issue also, that we did not play friendlies in Paraguay because we were not going to be able to fill up the stadium like it happened in Chile and it happened in Peru. It's obviously a reality. It's obviously true, but it's because the team's not winning, because the team's not productive, and people are not going to buy the tickets to watch this team. Every time they've done it lately, they've just been left down. I mean, I'm remembering that game in Ciudad del Este where it was a huge party and everybody got ready to beat Peru, and we weren't able to score a single goal in that game. I mean, the last time the FA, the national team, has asked people to go to their games, this team has not showed up.
Yeah, and I mean, just picking up on one thing I wanted to talk about there, the leadership and the team and the mentality, and this is where a lot of it seems to be coming in. And the big problem we had in that game, of course, we should move on to, I think, Julio Encisa. That Encisa was in one respect a bright spot. He had the most touches in the game. Imagine, like, if your number 10 has the most touches in the game, something you're doing right. Where Paraguay were getting the ball to him and feeding him, but he was making wrong decision after wrong decision after wrong decision. He took like 6 shots, all from about 30 yards out. I think he got one on target, but it just rolls to the keeper. He doesn't force really a good save. I think his long passing was off. He was like 50-50 his dribble attempts, which, okay, that's usual for him as well. He's going to try and do that, but you could see that Encisa was trying to do everything himself, and that's a one stay. And he was by far the best player, like quality-wise. When he picked up the ball, you could sense there could be danger, right? His technical ability is above everybody on that field of play. Ramos also didn't play, but I mean, you can see he's the best chance of making something happen, him or Kaku. But at one point, you needed a senior player, to say, hey, like, pass the ball, stop doing this, make some right decisions. We're not here to mess around with 2-0 down or 3-0 down. Maybe at that point, you can't just pick up the ball and run at people all the time. I mean, then you become predictable, which is what happened. And he didn't cause any kind of serious goal threat. So that's when you would want like Gustavo Gomez or maybe Almiron or somebody to say, hey, what are you doing? And actually, you could tell Enciso and Almiron didn't want to pass the ball to each other for that second half. So you can already see like there's a bit of tension there from these two players. The who was the main player, Almiron, and now who's the new kid on the block. And so you need somebody to unite that at that point, right? There was one time where I think they even crashed into each other in like the 80th minute or something. So there's a lot to work with there because Enciso is your best chance of something happening, but he needs some of that guidance from the senior players to kind of make sure he's not just playing for himself. And it was something that Garnero got asked, and he picked it up, and he said, yeah, we had to have a word with him after the game. He's trying to become the savior of the team, carrying the team on his back. And so that's already an issue that we've seen there, and it's just his first 90 minutes in a year, but people have picked up on already. So there's so much to kind of sort out in the dressing room with the team, not just out on the pitch. It's a lot of work to do in a week, and maybe it's the Panama game that kind of might sort out a lot of problems, because of course if you win a game 2-0, 3-0, then a lot of these problems can disappear.
It's gonna be obviously interesting, guys, because I think usually when you have a big loss like this, typically you want to respond and be like, okay, yeah, we need to like really switch it up. So I mean, that's logically that would be the way. But with this Paraguay side, it's like, what do you do? I mean, I'm already thinking ahead to Sunday. I'm thinking, what the hell is even our best team? Like, what are we gonna do? And even more so, is the team that we're gonna get the same one we're gonna get for the game against Colombia? Because I'm looking at Colombia, they're 20 games unbeaten, guys. Do we have enough to beat them? And supposedly that is the game that, okay, you could look at Brazil, and I think, Brazil will always be a difficult game, and yeah, they could do something. But realistically, in terms of quality and standard, you're much closer to Colombia than you are to Brazil. And you're just thinking, and I think Colombian fans are also probably thinking like, yeah, we can definitely do this. We can get the win. But I don't know, man. I mean, Fede, help me out here. You're already probably thinking and already imagining scenarios. Rob's going to be in Houston, and you're going to see a lot of probably disappointed Paraguayans out there in a sea of yellow Colombians. I just don't know how it's going to be done. And even if they get the result against Panama, who's to say that's going to be expected for those games in the Copa?
There's a saying here in South America, the faith is the last thing you lose, Roberto. But, on this team, nobody's really expecting much in this Copa America. Let's be honest, especially because of the teams that we're going to go up against. So nobody is expecting a win against Brazil. Nobody's expecting a win against Colombia. People are looking at that game against Costa Rica. Oh, we might do something against Costa Rica, just like this game against Panama. Hopefully we do beat Panama and we head into the tournament with a better attitude and with a better mindset, right? I mean, Garneto's always talking about that. Let's just get one goal. Let's just get one win. We're hearing this from our coach. I don't think it's just that. It's just that one goal. It's just that one win. I mean, you have to get on a streak. You have to start winning. You have to have a winning mentality, which is something that we haven't seen from this team. And as we're heading into the Copa America, to be totally honest with you guys, I mean, putting how angry I am away, seeing that we haven't done much ever since 2010, and we're in 2024, and I'm looking at the Paraguayan football, and I'm grabbing my head and seeing everything that we're doing bad still, and we're doing wrong, and that's why the national team is doing like it's doing. But as we're heading into the Copa America, guys, if we do something well, if we get a win in any of the 3 games, or if we get 2 wins, if we get through in this group stage, we might even be the biggest surprise or the biggest upset of the Copa America, if Jamaica doesn't do something either, right? I don't know if you guys have another team that might surprise.
Canada,
or Canada.
Bolivia. You got those countries.
I think people are even waiting for Alfonso Davies to do something at a certain point in a Canada game. So I don't think people would be that surprised if Canada does something in their group. But there are weak teams in this Copa America, and I believe as we're heading into it, we're one of those teams. The standings don't lie in the South American qualifiers right now. We're down there, guys, and we have to face this reality. Players have to look at themselves. They have to really build something in that locker room, because I do think that the group is not doing well. I mean, the group itself. I mean, Ralph talked about the issue of not having that leadership. You're seeing that Almiron is not connecting with Enciso. The stars are not coming together. I don't like that. The coach needs to work on that. You need to build that. You work on, and if you can't work on that, you have to bring other players, and you have to leave those out of the team, because they're going to be a problem, and they've been. That's been a problem in this locker room. We can't get through that issue, and I do think that's in the player's head, and it's been a problem in games also, and the mentality, Rob. Besides everything that we're missing from the football point of view, I mean, we need to win. We need to do something in this Copa America. But if we win, we're gonna be a surprise. I'm telling you.
It's a strange situation we're in, because Paraguay traditionally, throughout the 90s, when they were having kind of their golden period, the players in general were quite average. If you look at the world situation, you're talking about their best players was like a Chiqui Arce, who never left South America, or Roque, but Roque wasn't playing regularly in Bayern Munich when he was having his golden period. But what happened was, when that group got together, they became much bigger than what they were doing at their clubs. That was always the Paraguay's success. And now we're almost in a reverse situation, where we have 3 Premier League players. One of them, of course, he's not here. He's in the Olympics. We have 3 players in the Premier League. We have probably the best defender in South America consistently in Gustavo Gomez. We have a Champions League winner from Asia in Kaku. We have these players that are doing really. Ramon Sosa is on the verge of going to Europe, surely, because of how well he's playing. So we have these players doing really well at club level, and then they're just falling apart when they come together. So it's a very strange situation, because this is totally different to the Paraguay history and culture of, we're kind of underdogs. People don't think we're very good. We're like average players in our clubs, but we're going to become much better when we come together. It's actually like, we're quite good guys. We should be doing something. And then maybe it's that ego, and they come together and like, we're actually not as good as we thought, because you're now going up against a Colombia where everybody is pretty much playing in the top 5 league. Obviously, Brazil is Brazil. You're going to come up against the Costa Rica, which is a very young team, but you have a very good coach in Alfaro, who could have been an option for Paraguay. He went around that Barros Schelotto time. And so suddenly it's not going to be enough that you're playing well for your club. You do have to lift your level again. And it's finding that. I think there's such like a cultural shift that needs to go on for this team to try and do something, make a surprise, like Fede said, but really even to live up to some of the potential of the quality of these players.
I guess to close it out here, and I'll start first. What's one message that you have to say to Garnedo and to the players? I'll start with Garnedo. I think he needs to take risk. He has to do it. It's the only way moving forward that you're going to have to go for it. You can't always consistently defend. Yes, it depends on who you're playing, but in these friendlies, at least the game against Panama, go and take the risk and try to go on the attack. I say the same thing for the players. Try to work out as best as you can. Don't try to rush things. For players like Enciso and Miron, they'll be ball hogs. Like, obviously, yes, you are incredibly talented on an individual standpoint, but you need to go and support the team as best as you can and work with it. That's my message. Fede, what would you have to say if you had Nani Garnedo and the players right in front of you right now?
Well, especially to Garnero, I would say, just like I was mentioning, bench the stars. I mean, you got to bench certain players that are not playing well, that are not contributing. You got to put them on the bench. You got to get more out of these players. And when you get more out of them, then you put them back on the starting team and built around the young players. I mean, I want to see a young team heading into the future. I think we're done with certain players, and I want to see the bright stars. I want to see Enciso. I want to see Ramon Sosa play a lot together in this tournament. And I want to see a team that can be better in that locker room. That's what I would tell Garnero. Get the players together, get the players together, make them watch games, make them watch movies. I don't know, spend as much time as they can right now, because they really need it. They really need to build something in that locker room. I think I would go for that, and obviously tell him to put the players in the right spots. I mean, build the team around the players, not build the team around your tactics or the way you think the football needs to be played. I think, in a national team, it's not the same thing as the club level. In a club, you have a lot more time to work on the team tactically, and Garnero, I think, needs to be a little bit more practical in that sense. That's kind of what the only thing I actually liked about our old coach, Guillermo Barros Echeloto. He was very practical in that sense, even though he did do a lot of bad things also in this team. And for the players, it's now or never for some of them. I mean, if they don't have a good Copa America, I don't know how they're even going to come back. I don't even know how some certain players come back to this country and play for the people. I mean, even in press conference, you're not hearing the players talk about how much it weighs on the people that we haven't been to the last World Cups. I don't think these guys yet, they don't know exactly how much people are suffering because of the fact that their team is doing so bad, and this needs to come together for them to be stronger, and not this to be a bargain for them, not for this to be a weight on their shoulders like it has looked lately. I think they have to build on that and not point fingers at people, not say, no, we're doing this wrong, the fields are ugly in Paraguay, this and that. No, guys. It's Copa America. You have to show up. It's you against the world right now. Hopefully that message kind of goes through the players and they play every single game, every single play like it's a final. That's what I want to see, Ralph.
Ralph?
Aggressive.
Yeah, I think for Garnero, it's very similar to what Fede was saying about playing players in their position and understanding the difference between this and club football. And I feel like I'm a bit of a broken record here, but Garnero's problem has always been the same, that he was really good in the club football in terms of the domestic league and the international games. It needs like a little bit different, and it's really a one-off game, and not much is you can't really change much, during the game. You have to get it right from the start. That's where he failed. And so I think just that idea of playing Kaku on the right wing and then watching him not track back for 2 goals, like we could all see it, and we're not professional coaches. So I think it's not being too arrogant in that feeling that you're going to make a change where no one else has made a change in this guy's career in 30 years. He's like 30 now, right? So it's play the players in their position to get the best out of them. And then for the players, I think is to think about, no one cares how much money you make. Nobody cares what club you're at now. You're going to spend 30, 40 years, hopefully, of your life back in Paraguay. And if you want to walk down the street and you want people to like you, think about Pipino Cuevas. I don't even remember what clubs Pipino Cuevas played in. I know River, and I don't think he went to Europe. He went to China, but he scored 2 goals in a World Cup game, and he's a hero, and he lives off that. And everybody loves him in Paraguay because of those 2 goals. And no one cares about what you did in your club or the Premier League. Honestly, Tacuara Cardoso, no one really cares that he played in a Europa League final, which is an amazing achievement.
Two of them. Two of them.
There you go, 2 of them, and scored in one. But everyone thinks about your penalty against South Africa, and he lives in Paraguay, and he's going to spend the rest of his life there. So I would just think about how do you want to play out after your career, your daily life, and it's what you do with Paraguay that's going to count, not how much money you earn in the Premier League or wherever you end up playing.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think certainly for a lot of these players, for your Almirons, your Encisos, your Gomez's, Junior Alonso's, and so on and so forth, you have to think about the legacy that you have and the responsibility that not a lot. Imagine the amount of footballers, players that want to be in your position right now and play for Paraguay, that want to do that. It's a dream come true for a lot of these guys. And these select 26, they have the chance to do it. You can't, for a country of 7 million people, to have that responsibility on your backs is huge, and you have to demonstrate it. The Guarani has always been something that we've been accustomed to, that has made Paraguay a household name in South America for many years. it's time to regain that identity. And I hope these guys understand it moving forward for this Copa America. Firstly, we'll see what happens in the game against Panama. But I think in these games where they understand they are the underdog, they know what it's taken and the responsibility of playing in these tournaments, go for it. Sometimes it's not what it means to play in your clubs, to earn big bucks, to understand what it means to play in a top league. You have to mention what it is from where you're coming from as well. That might sound a bit nationalistic or patriotic, but I think that's just the reality. It's the reality that these guys need to do. And I hope they understand that responsibility. And you look at players like Ramon Sosa, for example, a guy from the outskirts, 300 kilometers from Asuncion over there in Maracanã, no relation to the Brazilian one. Imagine what he had to do to risk his life, not risk his life, but, had to obviously, go through really deplorable circumstances to then go and travel to play for Olimpia, then go to Argentina and then make this jump to the national team. It's like that. You have to look at the past history, and I think that's the only way that you're able to be successful is being able to learn and utilize these tools. And yeah, we'll have to wait and see what happens as we close up another episode of Guarani Vision. We'll obviously talk about next week what happened in the game against Panama, and obviously go into the big preview for what we're going to see in this Copa America, if it's going to be a done in a week or maybe even longer. So yeah, I'm excited. We'll obviously have some really good interviews talking to people from Costa Rica and from Colombia and, of course, Brazil. Keep an eye on that for those that are listening as we close out another great episode of Guarani Vision. For myself, Roberto Rojas, Fede Perez, and Ralph Hannah, thank you so much for listening in. See you soon.